Howdy YouTube, and welcome to this episode of the Gunman. So today I'll be taking you guys through the paintwork on this VF SS Commodore. On this job here we're going to be painting the bonnet, as you can see there. We've got a bumper as well, and we've got a couple of blends on the guards or the fenders. The reason we're painting this car here is because the whole front had been peppered with stone chips. My boss was saying it was actually one of his family members or friends' cars or something like that. And supposedly he lives out in Lilydale or something, which is like a little bit further out of the Melbourne city. So maybe he'd like been driving on some country roads and picked up a few stone chips, like quite a fair bit to be honest. So I decided not to prime the entire bonnet. Well, I as you're about to see, I'm going to do some wet on wet primer, but I decided that I didn't need to put a sandable primer down. However, I did sandable prime the front bumper and wet on wet it. So yeah, look, with all those different angles in the bumpers, it can be quite easy to miss a couple of stone chips. So yeah, depending on how bad they are, obviously, you know, you might just you might pick them all up, pick all the stone chips up and then just wet on wet them. But as I say, this one was quite well peppered, especially that bumper. So I did decide to, I filled them up, then primed it, then sanded it down, and then we're still going to put a coat of sealer or wet on wet down. As much as anything, it's just to make the whole thing the same color. So yeah, this is actually one of my favorite parts of the Ppg system. I've actually been struggling with their colors a little bit lately. They've been really hit or miss, more miss than hit. But yeah, look, as it turned out, this color here wasn't too bad, but from memory, that's right, I did actually have a little bit of an issue with this color here. It's like a really common Holden color here in Australia, but like they didn't even have a color chip for it. So they had two variants, but no color chip. So it's like, it's a lot of wasted time. Like you'll get the Spectro, and then the Spectro will pick one, and then it turns out not very good, so you have to mix the other variant up. So a lot of the time you're kind of flying blind because the Spectro can be hit and miss. And then, as I say, they didn't even have a color chip for it. So what I did actually is make my own color chips. So I'll do my own spray outs, clear them down with some 2-pack clear, label it, and then I'll keep that. So next time this color comes in, I'll have my 2 spray outs and I won't have to muck around or I won't be flying blind. I'll know what's going on. So yeah, I have actually found that quite common, that they won't have color chips, especially for the Aussie colors. Like this one, I've done quite a few Aussie cars recently, like the Falcons and the Holdens, and they haven't had color chips for them. But between the wet on wet and the base coat stage, I like to give it about 20 minutes. So as I say, that wet on wet is one of my favorite parts. So you may notice I did actually decide to leave the masking on the fenders while I put the first coat of base coat down, just to get it covered. Now what I was actually putting down, that first coat of red that you saw me putting down, that was actually a ground coat, because remember, as I told you, like I mixed up a couple of little test mixes. So I think the first one I mixed up was the Spectro hit, then the next one was the other variant, and then it turned out that neither of them were really that good. So I mixed it up again, but adjusted the formula. That's right, now I'm remembering. I did this job last week. So yes, as I'm talking you guys through this video, I'm actually remembering how I did that job. And that's actually quite common for me to do. Like I'll mix up this variant and then I'll be like, okay, it did need to go a little bit bluer. Then I'll mix the bluer variant up and still mix just a test sample amount up. And then sometimes you'll be like, oh, it did need to go bluer, but that's actually still not a good variant. So you'll pick the best out of the two. You'll then adjust the formula in your own. Like I'll just sort of make it up myself, you know what I mean? I'll be like, okay, well, if I drop out half of the black or whatever it might be, it's going to be something different on each different color, obviously. But yeah, that's basically what I have to do quite a lot of. And I do point that out because look, I got to the point with Standox, which is what I used to use when I was over there in Perth, and even in the previous shop when I was working on the Porsches and that, I was using Standox too. But I got to the point that it was like 95% of the time I didn't even have to tint them. Like it was literally color chip, mix and paint. Color chip, mix and paint. and it was very occasionally you'd even have to do a spray out because their color chips would always replicate. I mean, there was 1 or 2 times that they didn't replicate, but generally they were really solid and they did have a good selection of color chips. So it was like 9 times out of 10 they, especially on all the modern cars, like I could guarantee they would have a color chip for this. But as I say, PPG don't even have one. But then if they ever didn't, the Spectro was so much better than PPG Spectro. Now look, it might sound like I'm just bagging on PPG, but at the end of the day, like, I'm just telling you my experiences, and I know that I'm not the same as everybody. Like I hear specifically from people over there in America, they seem to be like, man, it's the opposite over here. You know, like it's like they found that Standox, the colors were really bad, and PPG, they were like 9 times out of 10 really good. So I mean, I've had a pretty bad run in the last, specifically in the last 2 weeks. Like, I mean, there have been 9 colors out of 10 have been bad, you know what I mean? And I guess the other side of it is like how long it takes you. Like, you can get the color, no worries, but like if it takes, there was one color that I did a couple of weeks ago or last week, it took me like an hour just to get a blendable match, you know what I mean? So it's not that I couldn't get there, but it was a lot of time wasted to get there, if you know what I mean. So yeah, all of that aside, you may have actually noticed that I'm using the GPG. So this gun here, I've actually recently done a review on it, and it is actually the updated version of the GPI. So the GPI is a bit of a channel favorite. It's a gun that I've been a big fan of for quite some time. And yeah, they recently updated it to GPG. But yeah, if you would like to, be sure to go and check out that review that I did. Check through my latest videos. I was getting some average finishes in the clear coat. I found that it was a little bit too chunky, like the thickness of the clear wasn't quite right. So what I ended up doing is getting myself a viscosity cup, and then I found the finishes were much better, so it turned out I had to put a little bit more reducer in it. And while I was going through that procedure, I was looking at the technical data sheets and checking the viscosity and the recommended viscosity. And while I was doing that, I thought, hey, I may as well have a look at the recommended viscosity of the base coat. And as it turned out, the recommended viscosity of the base coat was like 26 to 28 seconds. However, on the computer, our computer here, the one that where I work anyway, it recommended 15% reducer. 15% reducer in the base coat made it run through the viscosity cup at like 43 seconds. So basically that's really, really thick. So it's way too thick. Yet it actually recommended on the computer, it said 15% in brackets for solids or something like that. So it's like, why? Oh, sorry, 15% for metallics, 20% for solids. But what I ended up doing is I'm going 20% for everything, and that's also made the base coat go down a little bit nicer. So I've actually, because of that, I've actually also slightly adjusted the way I spray the base coat. Not so much for the solid colors like this color here, but more so for the metallic. So I'll actually get a little bit further into detail about all that in another video. But yeah, for now we're up onto the clear coat stage, and what I've actually found is 0.9 reducer. So if that doesn't make any sense to you, don't worry, it's not just you that is confused by the Ppg mixing ratios. They're strange to me. Like most other paint companies will be like 3:1 plus 10%, but this company here, they go 3:1 to 1. So, or 3:1 to 0.9, you know what I mean? So I don't exactly know what it is in a percentage, but I think it's something like around the 20% reducer mark. So that's, yeah, as I say, I can't say exactly, but I mix it all up on the computer anyway. But yes, I have found that 0.9 is the best to be at with your clear coat anyway. Now it's actually the middle of summer here at the moment, so the weather's pretty nice and warm. So that actually also helps thin the clear down. But what I ended up starting to do towards the end of last winter, I ended up just putting the clear coat into the spray booth just to get the temperature up a little bit. And even if it's just up by a couple of degrees, you'll be surprised at how much of a difference it actually makes. So as I said before, I was actually using the viscosity cup there I was using it quite regularly before Christmas, and yeah, I was actually quite surprised at how much of a difference 10 or 15 minutes in the booth actually makes with the clear coat. So it really does thin it down a bit, and yeah, it does make a big difference. So if you are in the colder climates, I do highly recommend getting a little bit of warmth into the clear. As I say, like, it doesn't even need to be heaps. But yeah, like, you probably don't want it much above 30 degrees. Like, obviously if it's in the middle of summer and ambient temperature is 35 degrees, you haven't got much of a choice. In that case, you might want to just use a slower reducer, a medium or a slower reducer or something like that, depending on the size of the job. But yeah, one other thing I've actually found is with the solid colors like this one here, I've actually found the jobs come up quite a bit cleaner for whatever reason. Like, I think it's those little metallic particles, they can end up turning into like little D-nibs or something in the final finish. But another thing I've actually found really helps with the cleanliness of the jobs is using microfiber cloths. So it's something that people had been telling me about for years. Ever since, like, I was working over there in Perth, people were like, oh man, this guy, Motivated Painters, Gabriel, he uses microfiber cloths, you've got to get onto it, it's a really good idea. And to be honest, I wish I did get onto it earlier, but hey, I'm there now, and all I can do is recommend other people to do it, because I think like those microfiber cloths, they give the panels like a really good deep clean. Like, it removes like all of the little bits of dust and dirt out of the panel, so that makes a really big difference. Also, this job came up nice and clean, I think partially because it's a solid color, and also at Christmas time they gave the booths a big birthday. You might notice that the walls are nice and clean. They changed the roof and the floor filters in the spray booth, so I think that in and of itself actually made a big difference too. I think the roof filters were actually getting a bit full, so every time you turn the spray booth on, I reckon we were getting little bits of dust coming through those ceiling filters. So either way, that's about it for this job here. If you hang around for a second, I actually didn't even, at this point in time, I didn't even realize I got a big run on one of the guards, but if you hang around for a second, you're gonna see a big whopping run in one of the guards. So I do actually have some footage. I haven't actually got around to editing it or narrating it yet, but I do actually have some footage of myself removing that run. If enough people do sound interested, then I guess I'll throw a video together for you guys. I think part of the reason I got that run is that because I'd actually been using that GPG for like a full week for every job for clear coat and base coat. Then when I went back to this job here, I used my Pro Light, and it was a lot faster. I really did notice that the Pro Light was like absolutely smashing it on. And I think also, like, when I was reviewing the footage, I deliberately looked at the way that I painted that section of the guard. So that was actually handy to have the footage of myself painting that. And I reckon I doubled up. I did. I doubled up on the top section of that guard there. So for whatever reason, I must have like thought I hadn't painted it yet, and I sort of put an extra pass over there when I obviously didn't need to. So that's it after a bit of a polish up. So you can probably see that there is a bit of a flat spot there. So yeah, like, you can't still see the run. The run itself is gone, but there's no orange peel, so it doesn't look exactly right, if you know what I mean. But at the end of the day, it's something that not everyone is going to notice. And this job here, because it was stone chip, the owner actually decided to get the front end vinyl wrapped so that it doesn't go and get stone chipped again in between him.
Yeah, I'm just doing a little video on this,
he's selling this car here. But anyway, guys, I hope you have enjoyed watching this video. If you have, give it a big thumbs up. If you'd like to support this show further, be sure to go and check out some of my merchandise. There is a link in the description. Until next time, get out there and paint some shit. Gunman out.
It looks nice.